This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Good morning. It is now 9:01 a.m. on July 16, 2021. This is session 21 in the hearing on UZDP 2019-00562. We had concluded the direct testimony and cross-examination of Mr. Hankin last evening. And so we start with the opportunity for redirect this morning. Mr. Hankin, I'll remind you that you're still under oath. Mr. Whitehead, do you wish to redirect?
I do, thank you.
Proceed.
Mr. Hankins, do you remember yesterday discussing on cross-examination Southeast 4th Street?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'd like you to take a look at the town center plan at page 46, and I'm also going to ask Ms. Schaff if she can put this up. It'd be the town center plan, page 46, figure 32. It's on page 32. Or I'm sorry, page 46. My bad. It's page 46, figure 32. The Sammamish Town Center plan, not the infrastructure plan. We're just trying to get that caught up. We inadvertently over here pulled up the infrastructure plan.
That's fine. While you're doing that, I'm trying to bring it up on mine also. So it's a little closer. I would note for the record that the online version reads amended in 2020 by ordinance number so-and-so. To the best of my understanding, that ordinance merely changed the designation of one part of the town center from the E zone to the B zone. I don't think there were any changes in any of the parts of the town center plan that you folks have been testifying about in our hearing. If I'm wrong on that, please tell me, but that's my understanding. So I'm looking for page 46.
Page 46 of the town center plan, yeah, figure 32. And
Page 46.
It's on the city's website, and I sent a link to it.
Page 50.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I didn't catch what you were saying. I was trying to provide direction to Ms. Schaff as to the...
I merely said that it turns out that page 46 in the plan turns out to be PDF page 50.
Okay.
Because of the preface.
Gotcha. If I might have just a moment here, we're having trouble pulling this up here. I'm going to see if I can just send Ms. Schaff the link. Okay, you should have the link in your email box now, Ms. Schaff. And I probably would have dispensed with putting it up on the screen, except for I want to use it again after that. Okay, can I ask if the hearing examiner and opposing counsel have it pulled up and the witness?
I have it pulled up, yes.
I have it up.
I have it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just go without it on the display at this point. So Mr. Hankins, can you look at page 46, figure 32 of the town center plan? And can you tell me the specific designation that the town center plan gives to Southeast 4th?
Yes. Based on what we're looking at here, figure 32, the streets that are outlined in black shown on the diagram refer to connector streets where the city may participate in construction and funding.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hankins, I'd like everyone to turn, please, to the town center plan at page 25, figure 21.
And that would be on PDF page 29. And I have it on my screen if you want to go ahead.
Okay. Do you have it handy now, Mr. Hankins?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So on page 25, figure 21, is Southeast 4th Street included within the TCA1 zone boundary lines in this town center figure?
No, it is not.
Okay, Mr. Hankins, could you take a look at exhibit, it's 1007, and you'll see that that's a resolution. Following the resolution are the interim town center street design standards. I'd like you to flip to the interim town center street design standards.
This is exhibit 1007. Would you?
1007, yes.
Thank you.
And we're on Bates page stamped 3.
I'm ready when you're ready.
Okay, you have it handy, Mr. Hankins?
I do.
Okay, can you tell me how many total pages the interim town center street design standards are?
They are... So the entire, the entire document?
Yeah, just of the interim, not the resolution, just the standards themselves.
Oh, yeah, approximately 350 pages.
No, I'm sorry, the interim town center design standards. It's exhibit 1004.
Oh, 1004.
1004 or 1007?
I'm sorry, my apologies, 1007.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm with you now. So,
okay,
a total of 4 pages is the answer to
Okay, we were talking over there, just so I want to be clear. So the interim town center design standards in Exhibit 1007 are how many pages total?
4 pages.
Okay. Mr. Hankins, do you know how many pages the 2016 Public Works standards are, including appendices?
Yeah, over 350 pages.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the interim town center street design standards do not cover all the same topics that the 2016 Public Works standards do?
Yes, that is fair to say.
Okay. I'd like you to take a look at the following provision of the Sammamish Municipal Code, 21B 15270. And let me know when you've found that, please.
Okay. I have it.
Okay. Could you read 21B 15270, please?
Yes. Multifamily means an apartment per SMC 21A 15355.
Okay. Mr. Hankins, could you please turn to Exhibit 9 at page 16?
Almost there. I've got Exhibit 9 up, and what page was it again?
Bait stamped page 16.
16. Okay.
Yesterday on cross-examination, you were asked about paragraph 2 there, and specifically the language which reads, land uses approved by the planning department. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the entirety of that sentence reads, the following are required for a concurrency application, and then the first in a series is land uses approved by planning department. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Can you tell me what your understanding of that provision is?
Yes, so just to be very clear, that my understanding is that it's a proposed use as what would be allowed under or authorized under the zoning code. It's not an approved use in saying that it is approved at that particular location at that particular time.
And Mr. Hankins, at the time an applicant goes in for a concurrency certificate, they don't actually have any land use development permit approval, do they?
No, they do not.
And that's always the case, isn't it? They never have one?
That's my understanding, yes.
I'd like to direct you to the UZDP planning principle for building scale and compatibility, which is in 21B95. I believe it's 050 sub 6, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken on that.
I believe that is correct. Okay, I have it.
Okay, can you look at subsection 6A and subsection 6B there, which you were asked about on cross-exam yesterday? And my question for you is, does both section 6A and 6B refer to orientation of buildings?
Yes, they both do.
Okay, Mr. Hankins, while you're there, you were also asked on cross-examination yesterday about section 6B and the concept of the wedding cake approach. Do you recall that?
I do recall, yes.
And I think the line of questioning was along the lines of, you know, this is really the only guidance provided to an applicant. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Doesn't land use goal 2.3 in the town center plan provide more specificity with regard to the wedding cake approach than does section 6B of the planning principle for building scale and compatibility?
Yes, it does.
If I could just check my notes for 1 minute, I might be done. Thank you. I'm finished with my redirect.
Thank you. Ms. Koloskova, any additional cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple questions here. Can you take a look at a definition in Sammamish Municipal Code 21A 15355? And I failed to say good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
21A 15355.
Yes, I have it here.
Okay. Can you read me that definition, please?
Sure. Dwelling unit, apartment, means a dwelling unit contained in a building consisting of 2 or more dwelling units that may be stacked, or 1 or more dwellings with non-residential uses.
Okay, and then can you read me the definition under 21A 15370?
370? Yes, I'm ready.
And if you could just read me that one.
Dwelling unit, townhouse. Oh, okay. Dwelling unit townhouse means a building containing 1 dwelling unit that occupies space from the ground to the roof and is attached to 1 or more other townhouse dwellings by common walls.
And does that definition make a distinction also in terms of the type of ownership, whether it's a fee simple or a condominium?
No, it does not.
By the way, have you ever heard of the phrase a detached single-family condominium project?
No, I do not believe that I have.
Have you ever had the opportunity to review and permit a detached single-family condominium project?
Objection. It wasn't that asked and answered.
No, I asked if he's ever reviewed one.
If
You can just say no.
If he's never heard of one, how could he have reviewed it?
Fair enough. I'm not sure why he couldn't just say no.
Well, if he did, he was in a fog when he did it.
We'll pretend that. Could we go to Exhibit 10, please?
Exhibit which?
10.
10? Thank you.
1010. Sorry. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes, but when you leaned back, it was pretty faint.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Are you there, Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I am. I'm pulling it up here. Exhibit 10. It's the traffic concurrency certificate.
Yes. And if you take a look,
we're on Exhibit 10. What page?
there's just one page to it.
Okay.
Just one page, yes.
So, Mr. Hankins, in the middle of the page, do you see Section 5?
I do.
And do you see whether any number of units are proposed as single family?
Yes, I do.
What does it say there?
Well, what I'm looking at, it shows a -4.
And for multifamily, how many units?
It shows 357.
And this is the city's certificate of concurrence. This is a city document, correct?
Yes, this is issued by the city, correct.
And by the way, if the examiner were to agree with the city and deny the UZDP application, would the applicant have to come in for a new certificate of concurrency if it was proposing this same number of units and square footage, but in a different configuration?
Yes, they would.
And why would that be?
As this certificate will have expired and require a new certificate to be obtained.
And is there any guarantee that the number of trips would be available? Do you happen to know?
Objection. What's the relevance here?
Well, the examiner asked yesterday in his questions whether he was asking about what would happen if there had to be a reapplication for a similar application. He was asking about time bars, and I'm asking about, for that reapplication, if I believe Mr. Hankins' answer was he didn't know, but are there any other bars to reapplying? I believe the examiner's question allows me to follow up on that.
Mr. Hankins doesn't run the concurrency program
Mr.
at the city.
Hankins can answer the question, please. He can simply say he doesn't know.
Objection overruled.
It's still not.
You may answer the question, Mr. Hankins, assuming you remember.
Okay, just so that I'm clear, can you ask the question one more time?
Sure. My question was, do you happen to know whether if the applicant came in for this same number of units and square footage, do you happen to know if the concurrency system would allow them to get that same number of square footage and residential units again?
I'm going to object on foundation.
Overruled.
So the answer to that is I don't administer or run this program for the city, and I do not know what the outcome would be at this point in time.
Okay, who should I ask that question of amongst the city's witnesses?
Yeah, I mean, this is the planning department, not the traffic department.
Mr. White, could the witness just answer the question? Just if he doesn't know, he doesn't know. If it's one of the witnesses, he can answer it.
So again, this is run by the Public Works Department. It's not something that's within my purview. And are you asking if there is anyone that has testified so far that could speak to this? Is this?
No, she's asking you if you know who the future witnesses are planned to be, is there one of them that would be able to answer this question?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay. But you did testify as to the public works standards, so that piece you're familiar with, but the concurrency you're not, right?
I don't think that's a fair or accurate assessment of what we talked about yesterday. We discussed the process of the comments on an application being provided to myself for purposes of summarizing that, including those comments from various departments, whether it's public works or parks or fire or anyone else, as it relates to an application. This is not the same circumstance.
But fair enough. You're not testifying as an engineer or on behalf of the public.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just. Mr. Examiner, you had asked Mr. Hankins yesterday about the memorandum of agreement and its references to further agreements.
Yes, I remember.
There are a number of exhibits that are not in the record that the parties could include and go over if the examiner wants more discussion of that, and I could ask Mr. Hankins, but I don't want to go down that line of inquiry at all unless the examiner feels that's relevant to his decision.
The only reason I asked was that the MOU makes reference to a follow-on agreement to be done by a date certain. And I did not see anything in the record that indicated that such an agreement had happened. And I was just curious whether this requirement or this provision of the MOU had been fulfilled or whether it just sort of drifted off into Never Never Land. So I don't know whether it's relevant or not. I saw a gap in information and I was hoping that it could get filled.
Well, maybe I can ask Mr. Hankins. Mr. Hankins, were you involved in any further discussions regarding a follow-up agreement, whether any sort of follow-up agreement to the memorandum of understanding?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. Then I will ask that of another witness. That concludes my recross. Thank you.
Okay. I have, I think, only one question. Mr. Whitehead had you acknowledge that Southeast 4th is not included within the A1 zone. It's not zoned A1. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
I have this recollection in my noggin that in Sammamish, none of the public rights of way are zoned, that the zone boundaries come up to the edge of the right of way. So no streets in Sammamish have anything. Is that recollection correct?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Thank you. Any redirect, or can we move on to our next witness?
Give me just 1 second. I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Hankins.
Okay. We're going to need a few minutes here at the. We're going to need a few minutes here at the city to reorganize and switch places and get the next witness in.
Thank you.
What's a few minutes?
10, please.
15? 10?
10.
Okay. It is 9:30, and we stand at recess until 9:40.
Thank you.
If we could shut off the recording, I'd appreciate it.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, and welcome back. It's 9:41 a.m. on July 16, 2021. This is the start of session 22 in the appeal hearing of UZDP 2019-00562. Mr. Eglick has replaced Mr. Whitehead as counsel for the city. And who is your next witness?
It'll be the director of the department, David Pyle.
Thank you. Mr. Pyle, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be offering in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
David Pyle, P-Y-L-E.
Thank you. Your witness, Mr. Eglick.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, could you just confirm for the record what your current position is, please?
I serve as the Department of Community Development Director.
And how long have you been in that position?
I have been officially in the director position since December of 2019. Prior to that, I served as the interim director beginning in August of 2019.
And could you just go over, we have your resume, which is Exhibit 46, but could you just go over briefly what various positions you held prior to being director and interim director with the City of Sammamish?
Sure. Prior to holding the position of interim director, I served as the deputy director beginning in November of 2015.
And prior to that, you had other municipal experience, which is listed on Exhibit 46, which is your resume. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So just to, as I say, I'm not going to go over everything, but your resume shows a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Washington in 2014. And prior to that, you obtained a degree in Bachelor of Science in Natural Resources from Colorado State University. But just since you've received your Master's in Public Administration, have you been employed, and before, in fact, have you been employed in various planning positions with various municipalities in the region?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'll refer the examiner to Exhibit 46 for the depth of the director's experience. Are you aware of the department's UZDP decision that we're here today to talk about?
Yes, I am aware of it.
Okay. And could you explain, well, before we get into that, let me just ask you a question. Did you hear the previous interchange or exchange, whatever the right word is, about a concurrency certificate in relation to the project we're here about today?
Yes, question from Ms. Koloshkova to Mr. Hankins, and Mr. Hankins' response back.
So just to kind of get this clear, does the effect of a department decision on a UZ, or the potential effect of a department decision on a UZDP have any bearing on the department's decision under the UZDP code criteria?
Could you restate the question?
I probably should, shouldn't I? When the department decides whether or not to approve or deny a UZDP, does the department look at what might happen if an applicant had to reapply for a concurrency certificate?
No, we do not.
And in fact, the concurrency certificate process is, I think we already had testimony, is handled by Public Works. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that a process that somebody sits down with a few pieces of paper and says, well, we're going to give them a concurrency certificate or not, as far as you know?
No, it is not. It involves a fairly extensive, detailed computer model that must be run.
Okay. And is that, from your understanding of it, I understand you're not working the black box or in the middle of all that, but from your understanding of that, is that kind of a facile process that you can get a quick answer to?
No, it is not.
Okay, going on to the department's UZDP decision that we're here about today, what was your role in it, if any?
My role was in providing oversight through the review process to the staff that were working on the project. engaging in pointed conversations, specific conversations around steps in the process where the application had been reviewed by the line staff assigned to that project. They were reporting to me on the progress and their findings and engaging in discussions on decisions around which steps to take. For example, a review of completeness of application and whether the application was complete and whether it was appropriate to issue a notice of complete application, and further steps down the line as the review progressed.
There's been discussion, including by the examiner, about a remand, and I believe the examiner even asked yesterday what, and I'm paraphrasing, so I hope the examiner will correct me if I'm getting a notice on this computer that says slow network connection, turn off webcams. So I'm not sure what I should do. I'm sorry.
That's a go-to meeting issue. We just gotta wait it out.
I'm told that's a go. So can I go ahead?
Click ignore.
Click ignore. Okay. I was afraid to do that without asking. Okay, I've clicked ignore. Can I go ahead? Okay. Sorry about that.
For whatever it's worth, you're coming through fine to me. I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Thank you.
Any stutter or anything. So far you're good to go.
Well,
from the perspective,
no stutter other than what's inherent in my questioning. I was trying to ask you, Mr. Pyle, before the notice came up, that the examiner had asked what would happen if there were a remand, or what would the department do if there were a remand. I honestly don't remember the exact question, but it was something about, I think the import of it was, why not a remand, and what would happen if there was one? So if we could maybe take those one at a time. Does the department have a position on remand?
Our position is embodied in our decision. I believe it's Exhibit 1, the city's staff report. That is our position on this application. If the examiner were to make a finding that this department erred in its decision and was to remand it back to staff, we would again resume review according to the examiner's directions.
And is the department recommending or suggesting that remand would be an appropriate outcome?
We do not feel it would be an appropriate outcome in this case. We feel that we have completed our review and we have outlined our reasons for denial included in Exhibit 1.
Okay. And just briefly, can you explain, because the examiner seems to be asking about that, why not a remand, and certainly the applicants are asking about, why not a remand rather than issuing a decision on the application?
It is our position that we have provided ample feedback to the applicant beginning far before application was made through pre-application process. We have done our best to provide information to the applicant to help them design a project that is compliant with our code and consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, including the town center plan. It is our position that we continued to work with the applicant in a productive manner in an attempt to see progression towards an application and design that's compliant with city code and city policy, including the town center plan. It is our position that the applicant did not make progress or substantial progress towards compliance with the city's code and the town center plan. It is our position that the applicant ignored comment and direction provided by the city and did not incorporate it into its design. And the question for us has been is, if not denial, well then how many rounds of review does it take to get this application into compliance? At what point does the applicant take the city's comments seriously and actually incorporate them into its design? So our decision on denial was one that was a very heavy decision. It was a very difficult decision on the part of the city. However, what ultimately factored into it was that we did not see substantial progress towards compliance. And even given all of the pre-application work that was done with the city and all of the review comments through the first round of review, that ultimately resulted in our decision that we did not want to continue with this project and do what I call design by review. Rather, we needed the applicant to provide a design that was of their own making that was compliant with city code. Too often in the past, I've seen and been involved in projects where the applicant basically wore down the city to the point where the city was accepting a design that was possibly compliant but undesirable to the city. So in this case, we looked at all the work that had been put into it and made a determination that we had given them adequate information by which to provide a design that was compliant to city code and to city policy, including the town center plan. And we decided that a denial was appropriate.
Okay, thank you. No other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Goloskova.
I might just have 30 seconds. I've got to grab an exhibit.
Certainly.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Good morning, Mr. Pyle. Duana Koloshkova, we've met before. Nice to see you. Mr. Pyle, just to be clear, are you a licensed engineer in the state of Washington?
I am not.
Okay. And you work for the planning department, not public works, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is it your position that the city, is it your position that I'll use the alley pavement issue as an example. Is it your position that that consideration is not appropriately handled through a remand instruction?
It's my position that that could be handled through a remand instruction.
Okay. And did you hear testimony yesterday as to the right-of-way vacation topic?
I did, however, I was multitasking, so I was not 100% focused on the testimony.
Yes, I understand. To the extent that you understand that issue and the testimony so far, do you believe that the right-of-way vacation could be the topic of a remand instruction?
My position on the right-of-way ownership is that the application actually should not have been deemed complete because it does not, STCA does not control all of the property that is within the boundary of the proposed development. And per the city code, a requirement for application is that the applicant controls all of the property under review with that application.
Did you review that Public Works Appendix I document that we talked
I
about
did not.
yesterday?
No,
You did not. Okay. And is it public? Is it planning or public works that handles right-of-way dedication processes?
Public Works.
Okay. So, and did Public Works give you any instruction prior to your notice of completeness that it believed the application should be deemed incomplete?
They did not.
Did they ever give you any notice that they believe the application should be deemed incomplete?
They identified that they believe that there is a lack of ownership on the part of the applicant or control of the property on the part of the applicant in a specific area, which is the location of the city's right-of-way.
And did they ever tell you they believe the application should be deemed incomplete?
After the application had been deemed incomplete and after the first round of review had been completed, the issue was raised and a discussion was had regarding the ownership of that portion of right-of-way. At that point in time, they did make a recommendation amongst the team that we continue with review.
Okay. And the department did, pardon me, the city did issue a notice of completeness, correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, they did the city issued 2 notice of completeness documents, correct?
I'm not aware of a second. I'm only aware of a first.
Would you rest on the exhibits in the record for your answer to that question?
Could you restate the question?
Could you go to page 6 of your decision, please?
One moment. I am on page 6.
Okay. Do you see item number 36 on that page?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And could you tell us what that says?
That says second letter of completeness.
And that date?
Is July 13th, 2020.
Okay. And do you happen to know why the city issued a second letter of completeness?
I believe that letter was issued primarily to outline the 120-day review clock noncompliance. However, it was also issued to notify the applicant and the public the city had reviewed its application and had deemed it complete for continuation of processing.
But do you know whether that was, so that was issued, well, are you familiar with a set of documents that has generally been referred to as the June resubmittal?
I am not familiar with that term.
Okay. Are you familiar with whether there was a resubmittal made in this application?
Yes, I am familiar with the fact that there was a resubmittal made after the first round of review comments was sent out. The applicant worked on corrections or revisions to the project design and then resubmitted application materials.
And was there more than one round of review comments in this project provided by the city?
In formal review of an application submitted for UZDP, there was one round of review comments submitted on this application.
Was there any informal review comments provided after the first round of review comments were issued?
I'm not aware. There may have been meetings held and comment matrices updated as a result of meetings that were held. However, I was not part of that process.
Did the city ever provide any informal or formal review comments, to the best of your knowledge, to the applicant after June 2020?
I'm going to object as to the form of the question.
And why? What's wrong with it?
Well, and maybe it's not the form, maybe it's the line of questioning. This witness has explained what his role was we're now going into the detailed interstices of who, what, where, when, why, how, which we've been going through in loving detail for this entire week. The chronology is well known. The documents are well known. A memory test of a witness who's already said that he's the director and did not become engaged in every, date and minutiae. I suppose maybe it can be used to temporarily make the witness feel bad or embarrass him, but how does it bear on the merits?
Well, may I respond, Mr. Gullop?
You may.
Thank you. Mr. Eglick asked the director a series of questions regarding review of this project, and Mr. Powell testified as to his perspective regarding how the city handled review of the project and its arrival at the denial it has issued. I am entitled to ask cross questions on that topic area, and I'm simply asking that question to clear up his testimony because he is giving me relatively extended answers. So I'm entitled to pursue the line of
I don't.
I'm going to overrule it for the time being. If we go too far afield, either I'll stop it or Mr. Eglick, you can chime in again. I do understand your argument that Mr. Pyle, as the director, presumably did not sit down and spend every hour of every day working on this project. He has testified that he had interaction with the planners who were working on the project at various points, and to the extent that that's the level she's asking about, I'm comfortable having the questions.
Could I ask that if we're going to talk about, were there comments or not, and when were they submitted or provided, or meetings or that sort of thing? Can I ask that the questions be directed to, for example, the chronology and the decision, and ask about his knowledge of the particular content or something, so that we're not just off in a pure memory test for the director who's already explained what his role was?
I would object to that direction, as council did not follow that approach in any way, shape, or form in his direct.
Well, that's because I didn't do what STCA council is now doing, which is attempt to memory test. In fact, the testimony from Mr. Pyle was very much that was not the level of detail that he was involved in. He was involved conceptually as the director of the department. So complaining that I did that, I didn't. Thank you.
Folks, I've heard enough from both of you. I am overruling the objection, as I said. I do not want and will not let this become a memory test for this witness or any other witness. So with that caveat, you may re-ask your question, because I know I've forgotten it, and I would imagine Mr. Pyle may have forgotten it.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. My question, Mr. Powell, was, to the best of your knowledge, did the city provide any comments, informal or formal, to the applicant on the June 2020 submittal?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to delve a little bit further on your comments about whether a remand would be appropriate or not. I've asked you on a couple topic areas. And let me back up, actually, pardon me. You are the individual who signed this decision, correct?
I believe so, but I'd have to go back and look. It's been a while. So in terms of the memory test, I'd have to go look at Exhibit 1 and see exactly what it says.
Let the record show that there's an electronic signature that says it's from Mr. Pyle.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pyle, did you read the decision before you, I guess, agreed to allow electronic signature?
Yes.
And did you author any portion of the decision?
I did not author outside of edits.
Outside of, pardon me?
Outside of edits that I made.
Okay. Could you tell me what topic areas you edited?
I could not recall offhand. Primarily, it was word choice edits, and it was related in some cases to asking for additional clarifications on topics where I thought that the city's position was not, the foundation for the city's position was not clearly laid out. I did not offer edits in terms of the correctness of the findings. Rather, I read it with the eye of the final consumer, if you will, the individual who would be reading it, trying to understand why the city rendered that decision. And I offered edits asking for clarifications or offering substitute word choice where I felt there was a word that better described what the staff was attempting to convey.
Was the purpose of the decision to disclose to the applicant all the bases on which the city was denying the UCDP application?
Yes, that's part of the purpose of the decision. The purpose of the decision primarily is to memorialize why we made the decision.
Okay. For the topic of affordable housing, have you been present for discussion of that topic?
Peripherally.
And in your opinion, is it possible for the examiner to craft a remand instruction to correct or update the number of affordable housing units?
I believe that's possible, yes.
Okay. For street designations, would it be possible for the examiner to correct and issue a remand instruction for the application to be corrected and updated to provide that all streets be designated pedestrian oriented?
In as much as that means, preferably with some additional clarity to that, but yes, I believe so.
Okay. And same question with respect, do you know what I'm talking about when I say a CARA designation?
Critical aquifer recharge area designation, yes.
We agree. Same question, could a remand instruction be crafted to address that topic?
Yes, it could.
And same question as to alley widths, could a remand instruction be crafted to address that topic?
Yes, it could.
And same question on townhouses. Could a remand instruction be crafted to instruct that any townhouses proposed be provided with a 30-foot setback from pedestrian-oriented streets?
I'm not sure that
I'm going to
that
object as to the form of the question. I'm going to object as to the form of the question, and I think I can address this on redirect, but the questions that are being asked are being asked in a way. I'm sorry, I didn't. Is my mic not working?
No, your mic's working fine. At least I could hear you. She was interrupting and
okay.
Stop her, so we had all three of us talking at the same time. So let's go back and
okay. The questions are artful, but they're also incomplete and vague, and I think it would be both efficient and more forthright to make sure that when a question is asked, for example, about, well, we'll have townhomes with 30-foot setbacks, whether a remand instruction could be crafted to require that the question also acknowledge whether or not a remand instruction could be crafted to address what the consequences of that would be. And that's just one example. I can do that on redirect, but it seems as if this is
I want you to
artful.
do it.
Thank you.
I want you to do it on redirect. And I think Mr. Pyle's answer
Yes,
on the townhouses was going to be longer than his other answers. Sounded like he was getting ready to not necessarily follow the same line of answer that he'd given on the other four examples. So let's go back and ask him about the townhouse and see what his answer was going to be. You
May
probably
you
should.
restate the question?
Same question as the others. Could a remand instruction be issued to allow any townhouses to be set back 30 feet from a pedestrian-oriented designated street?
Yes, and I feel that question is a bit different than the others because it includes more information at the tail end. And the assumption there is that the townhouses as a use and as a form within the development are accepted on a pedestrian-oriented street 30 feet back from the street. So I feel that is somewhat of a loaded question because the presumption there is that townhouses may be located on a pedestrian-oriented street 30 feet back. So I don't feel that is something that could be directly or could be directed on remand by the examiner, because I feel that that is an inconclusive topic and has been discussed at great length as part of this hearing.
And for when you use the word a loaded topic, can you explain what you mean by that?
I mean that my sense is you are attempting to get me to agree that townhomes may be located 30 feet back from the street on a pedestrian-oriented street.
And your answer to that would be yes or no?
Mine is I don't know. I would have to confer with the planning staff who are topic experts in this area.
Okay, fair enough. And I believe you had Mr. Hankins testify to that topic, and I'm not going to get into it further from there. Did you have occasion to review the consideration of townhouse uses as proposed in this project?
Could you clarify the question?
Were you part of any discussion groups that considered the proposed townhouse use that is part of this UZDP?
I was part of limited discussion around townhome use along pedestrian-oriented streets and some of the complexities at play there within our code. There seems to be an inherent conflict where, on the one hand, the code directs that townhomes are an allowed use. On the second hand, the code directs that townhomes shall be located 30 feet off of a street with a 30-foot setback. And then on the other hand, the code directs that on pedestrian-oriented streets, there needs to be pedestrian-oriented uses and pedestrian-oriented design that activate and promote pedestrian activity. I do not feel as an urban planner that 30 foot of setback along townhomes promotes pedestrian-oriented activity. My perspective is that townhomes could be intertwined with commercial uses, and you can achieve both. However, a monoculture of townhomes along the street does not constitute a use that promotes pedestrian-oriented activity along a pedestrian-oriented street.
So is it the applicant's job then to, I guess, balance these concepts and navigate the inherent conflicts that you just identified?
Yes, it is.
Objection is to the form of the question. Objection is to the form of the question. The first part, I have some problems with, but that's just my problem. The second part, I think, puts words in the witness's mouth to some extent and is unnecessary.
The witness himself stated the words inherent conflict. I would ask the examiner to instruct counsel not to use objections as a means to I guess, derail my examination. He has plenty of opportunity to address these issues on redirect.
I'm not going to.
I would take up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My turn. I'm not going to ascribe any purpose, good, nefarious, or neutral, to the objections. And I think it would be best if both counsel didn't try to ascribe things to their opposing counsel questions. I will allow the question, restate it, and simplify it if you can.
Well, I believe the witness answered it, and I'm comfortable with the answer.
What?
So
I heard him start to answer it, and then Mr. Reglick jumped in.
Okay, I believe the answer, he said yes. My question was, so I asked whether it was the applicant's role then to balance the concepts and the conflicts that Mr. Pyle just identified in code. And I believe the record would reflect Mr. Pyle started to answer yes, and then his counsel jumped in.
Is that going to be the extent of your answer?
I did have some additional information. My answer was yes. It would be the applicant's responsibility to balance all of the objectives within the code, within the town center plan. And what that might result in is an undesirable form of development to the applicant, who appears to be trying to build essentially what are single family homes, but are being called townhomes.
And why do you feel that these are, quote, essentially single family homes called townhomes?
Because of the way in which they're laid out, and because of the size of the homes. In my perspective and in my experience, when building townhomes and when trying to build townhomes in a diverse mixed use area, you look at building townhomes of different scale and size to offer different levels of affordability and access to the housing market to different segments of the community. You look at ways in which to integrate the townhomes with other commercial uses that will front the street and activate pedestrian oriented uses or activate pedestrian activity. When building a what I call a monoculture of single family townhomes that are sized at approximately 4,000 square feet, you are building a specific type of housing that is targeting a certain segment of the community for sale. There was some discussion in this hearing on consideration of the economics of the project. This project has largely been sold to the community based on what I've seen on the outside as a way to offer diversity in housing and affordable housing to the community. However, we're simply not seeing that with the choices being made and what product is being offered.
So are you aware of how many apartments are being proposed for this project?
I am not.
Okay. And are you aware of how many affordable housing units are being proposed for this project?
I can't recall offhand.
Okay, and where does this term single family townhouse come from you just used?
It is a term that I've heard used in the profession, and it refers to a townhome that is really targeting basically the same amenities as offered by a single family home.
And is there any sort of a term single family townhome in Sammamish code?
There is not.
Okay. And have you seen any provision in code that, pardon me, did you identify, or did the city, to the best of your knowledge, ever identify to the city that the concerns you have as to this type of townhome being the source of the city's frustration with the project?
No, and I would say that this is more of instead of targeting just the townhomes, it's more of a land use pattern and layout and how everything interplays with itself. And in this case, we're left with a monoculture block of townhomes.
Okay, but let me take your attention for a moment to Exhibit 1012. Could you pull that up?
I do not have it available, so I'd ask that it be shared on the screen.
Sure. And could we get Mr. Williams to get? Okay, and if we could go to, let's start at the top.
So I believe this was an email from Mr. Hankins to Mayor Moran.
Yes, and at the top you see the forwarding email string, and then we scroll down. And do you see you are CC'd on this email?
Back in August 18th of 2020, yes.
Okay. Can we take a look at the middle paragraph?
So you're looking at the second email in the string which is actually
I
the last one, right?
We're on page 1, and Mr. Pyle, if you could look at, there are a number of larger size paragraphs on the bottom half of the screen. If you could look at the second paragraph.
Okay. That's the August 18th email.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Pyle, do you have that document in front of you, or
yes,
we can zoom in?
It's on screen. I can read it.
Okay, great. Could you please read that middle paragraph for us?
Sure. A total of 77 residential units are proposed as affordable housing units. These units are proposed to be co-located with market residential housing to help meet the town center plan and its commitment to encourage housing affordable to a variety of income levels and to deliver a much needed affordable housing stock. This variety of housing for different income levels will increase housing opportunities for a range of household sizes and income levels, i.e. equal to less than 80% King County median income, which is identified as central objective to the town center plan. See Sammamish Town Center Plan on page 15 to encourage a diversity of housing to meet the needs of current and future residents. The plan calls for a mix of multifamily, townhouse, cottage housing, and single family units.
Okay. And this was an email to Karen Moran. Who is Karen Moran?
The city's mayor.
Okay. And so, Mr. Pyle, do you know when the city moved from, well, let me back up. Do you know whether the city ever considered doing a second round of comments in this project?
Yes, the city did consider a second round of comments.
Okay. And do you know when the city made the change from a second round of review comments to issuing a straight denial?
So I would suggest that there was not a change made, that there was a discussion made about which course of direction should be taken.
Okay. But did the city change from a type 3 to a type 2 process?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, did the city ever provide any notification to the applicant that it would not be providing a second set of review comments?
I'm not aware of a communication to the applicant to that effect.
And same question as to the change of permit type. Any communication to the applicant on that?
I'm not aware of any.
And same question as to the SEPA review. Did you ever, or did anyone ever communicate from the city to the applicant that the city would not be completing SEPA review?
I'm not aware of any communication on that.
And same question as to the binding site plan application. Any communication to the applicant that it would not be completing review of that application?
I'm not aware of any communication on that.
And lastly, same question for the plat application. Any communication to the applicant about the city's change of processing?
I'm not aware of any communication on that.
And
if I could ask just for precision in the record, there are two separate plat applications that have been filed, one for property within, one for property without the UDC. Mr. Pyle, do I construe correctly that your answer related to the plat within the UZDP?
Thank you.
Yes, it's the subdivision that is associated with the UZDP.
Thank you.
Thank you for the examiner. Thank you for the clarification. Can you tell me, as a result of this decision, what is the status of the binding site plan and plat that were covered by this UZDP? Do you know?
My understanding is that it's pending validation of the city's decision, and if the city's decision was to be upheld by the examiner, that application would be canceled because it does require a valid UZDP in order for it to proceed. However, if the examiner were to find that the city erred in its decision, that and remand was to be issued, that the UZDP, or excuse me, the remand of the UZDP and continuation of the review of the UZDP would allow for the continuation of all of the subordinate applications that require approval of that UZDP.
Okay. And what about SEPA? What would happen with SEPA depending on which way the examiner goes?
SEPA would ultimately be required to be completed prior to issuance of a UZDP should the examiner determine that the city has erred in its decision and remands for further review.
And are you the SEPA designated official at the city?
I am not.
You are not. Who is that?
It's Avril Beatty, who is our permit center and current planning manager.
Thank you. Did you ever explain did you ever describe anywhere in the record your concerns about I'll call them the design of the townhomes that you were just critiquing a moment ago?
I'm not aware of a description or a critique to that effect.
Okay. Is that you listed out when it comes to townhomes several considerations a moment ago. Were those considerations identified anywhere in the decision?
I believe the considerations regarding the activation of pedestrian space and how the townhomes relate to the pedestrian-oriented streets was included in the decision and described. However, the size of the townhomes is not something we regulate by code. That is simply more of a critique that is based on the statements of affordability. Although there are affordable housing units being provided within 80% of King County median income, one of the issues that we have regionally with our affordable housing is that there are many individuals who rent down in terms of their ability to rent, occupying spaces that would otherwise be available to middle income families. So really what we are looking for, and this is included in the city's housing plan, is we are looking for some addition of housing units in the city that will provide for diversity and choices in housing and help free up some of those units where people are renting down for families that are middle income families and are attempting to find rental units or units to buy within their price range.
Okay. Did you provide any email correspondence to follow up to Mr. Hankins' email to Mayor Moran, or pardon me, Councilmember Moran?
I did not, that I'm aware of.
Okay. Can you,
it was a year ago, so.
Can you go to one more exhibit and I just have a few more questions after this. Could you go to exhibit 2, please? And
I do not have that available. If you could pull it up,
we can pull that up. Okay, and I'm on exhibit 2, page 13, and I'm not gonna make you go through too many more exhibits, so don't feel like you're gonna have to scramble too much here.
Exhibit 2, if you could zoom in for the font size, that would be very helpful.
Yes, and we'll just start. And I'm pulling up goal H3. Do you see that goal?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that goal?
Yes.
Okay, and then the third column, see the answer yes?
Yes.
Okay, and then could we scroll over? I'm really sorry, this is kind of tricky with the font size.
It's working, I can see it.
We have to zoom out a tiny bit more. Can you still see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and could you read us the answer as to that goal?
STCA has demonstrated compliance with goal H3 by providing multifamily buildings with 300 apartments in the TCA1 zone. Exhibit 35G.
Do you disagree with that, with that analysis in Exhibit 2?
Based on the code and the policy statement, I agree with that statement.
Okay, fair enough. So you testified in direct that this, did I hear you correctly, that this was a heavy decision?
That's correct.
Okay.
There was extensive staff discussion about which course to take.
And I heard you testify something to the effect of essentially how many rounds of review do you have to go through? Do you remember that line of questioning from your counsel?
Yes, that comes from experience on many development projects where I have seen different policy approaches where I've seen up to 12 rounds of review. I've also seen applications that have been successful in 1 round of review.
But there could be a range in between.
There could be.
Okay. And how many rounds of review were performed here?
There were 2 rounds of review performed. The first round resulting in comments, the second round resulting in a denial and a staff report supporting the denial. And
the second round of review, was that based on revisions to the original application?
We're not hearing anyone. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
We can hear you.
You're loud and clear. Mr. Pyle, can you hear Mr. Eglick? Yeah, he can hear too. Sorry, the City Hall gremlin has struck again.
It seems that my home Wi-Fi is far better than the city's.
We'll all come over to your house.
Yeah. There are parts of this remote hearing system that I love dearly. One's probably pretty obvious. I don't have to drive 2 or 3 hours to get to the hearing every day. There are parts of the system that I don't like. And these technical glitches that keep throwing curveballs at us is the major part that's frustrating.
How are we doing, Mr. Eglick? Can you hear us?
Apparently not.
I can hear now, but I could not hear. There was a point at which I couldn't hear question or answer, and then it looked like the examiner was talking also, but I couldn't hear that either.
Oh, man.
Well, we'll be able to, I guess, have to take a look at the recording because I'm sorry that I can't. Oh, I do recall what I asked him. I'll cover that territory again. Mr. Pyle, I had asked you if we were discussing rounds of review. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And just to make this a little easy, you, I believe, had testified you've been involved in applications that have 1 round of review or up to, I think, 12 rounds of review. Was that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you had testified here there was 1 round of 2, it's in your view, 2 rounds of review.
That's correct.
And I had just asked you, after the June resubmittal, did the city ever provide any comments on those revised plans? And I anticipate Mr. Eglick will object and say asked and answered because we've been down that road before. But I would like to clarify that in the context of this discussion.
Same answer as before.
I don't understand the question because it went on so much and kind of then went into a comment about what I might object to. Could we just have an unfettered question, please?
Yes.
Fair
So, oh, pardon.
I said fair request, meaning rephrase the question.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to go all the way back?
No, I think we'd like you to shorten it up and just ask a question.
Okay. I actually think I can, well, so where was any information provided in the record as to, apart from the decision as to your review that you just testified you did for the June resubmittal?
It is embodied in the decision. My edits were incorporated in and responded to as necessary.
Do you feel the decision was in any way a close call?
from my perspective, it could have gone either way. And in this case, some of the more compelling issues were the fact that I guess the most compelling issue was that we feel like we had been providing very direct and specific feedback to the applicant dating far back, and this is all outlined in the staff report, into the pre-application phases about what would be appropriate and what our expectations were, what the code requirements were, what the policies were. And we feel that after the first round of review was provided to the applicant, that there actually were areas where it became more what we consider non-compliant or further from what we would have liked to have seen. So typically when I gauge progress, I look at whether or not the applicant has checked the boxes, so to speak, and completed the items that we have asked. And the report back that I got from the staff was that in this case, no, the applicant did make some changes to the application. However, there were items that they were unwilling to change. And that I see as something typically in development review that ends up becoming design by review. And it ends up becoming points of contention where the applicant's objective is to wear the city staff down in order to get their way.
So give me an example of one of those items that you felt the applicant was unwilling to change.
The orientation of the townhomes, the alley width or the alley pavement, the fire access, the fire apparatus access are two easy ones that come up. I'd have to look back through the staff report to recall what the others were.
Okay. Do you want to take a minute and tell me what the others were that you feel the applicant was unwilling to change?
Might take me about a half an hour if you'd like to take a recess in order for me to review the 34-page staff report.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you feel the applicant was unwilling to change the street designation?
I don't recall specifically on that.
Okay. Do you feel the applicant and you testified you feel the applicant was unwilling to change the orientation of the townhomes?
That's my understanding. The townhomes were placed along a pedestrian-oriented street where the intent was for those ground level street-facing uses, that those would be uses that would promote pedestrian activity. And in this case, we did not see the way in which those townhomes were laid out as a land use pattern promoting pedestrian activity along what is supposed to be a pedestrian-oriented street.
So do you understand, how would you describe the impact of this type of permit denial on the applicant STCA? What's the impact on the project?
Objection. That question is not one that is germane to this appeal hearing. The impact of a denial is a denial. Speculating as to how the applicant reacts or proceeds is not part of this hearing.
Well, I will sustain the objection, but on perhaps a different ground, and that is that I don't believe this witness knows from personal knowledge what the impact would be on the applicant. That would have been something for the applicant to testify about. Sustained.
Are you aware that the, I guess, result of a permit denial is that a new application would potentially have to be submitted?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified a moment ago that your decision could have gone either way. What would be the other way the decision could have gone?
It would have resulted in a lengthy correction letter and probably resulted in a meeting with the applicant, wherein we would have outlined that, that really we need you to review our comments and to take our comments seriously. Because we did not feel that was happening in many of the areas where we had previously provided comment, going as far back as the multiple pre-application meetings held with the applicant.
And this testimony.
I could not hear the end of that response. It's the telephone or internet gremlins, whatever it is. Mr. Pyle was just electronic. No offense, Mr. Pyle, was just electronic noise.
Can you try to? I heard it fine. There's a gremlin there. You're not hearing me now? Can you hear me?
When you said you're not hearing me now, I heard that, but I could see that you were talking before that, and I couldn't hear what you were saying.
This is weird. We're going to take our mid-morning break here in a few minutes, at least I'm hoping as soon as Ms. Koloskova completes her cross. And maybe you folks can try and look at it again and see what's going on. But I appreciate your frustration. It frustrates all of us. We've got a witness who answered a question that was very legible, and I think on the recording will be perfectly legible, but you folks just didn't hear it, and that's a shame. Mr. Pyle.
Well, it's a problem for redirect also.
Yes. Do you remember the ending of your question, of your answer?
Yes. My response was that I believe the question was what would have happened if there had been a correction letter issue, or if you'd chosen the other path, I think was somewhat of the wording used. And my response to that was it would have resulted in a lengthy correction letter with a lot of detail, and it would have resulted in our wanting to meet with the applicant to try to get them to understand that we really do need them to take our comments seriously, because we felt like they had not taken our comments seriously and had not incorporated many of our comments into their design, going back as far as one of the original of the several pre-application meetings that were held before they even made application.
And did you review the June resubmittal?
I was not one of the staff that reviewed the resubmittal.
So what is the basis of your answer that you just gave?
Based on the feedback from the design review staff and the review team.
This is not your personal experience reviewing the project?
That is correct. Thank you for the clarification.
And how many pre-application meetings were held for this project?
I believe that's listed in Exhibit 1 staff report. I'd have to go back and take a look to see exactly how many.
Do you know if, well, so you don't actually know if there was one or more pre-application meetings?
Objection. The witness today does not have off the top of his head memory, a numerology of all of the various pre-application meetings, post-application meetings, and so on. They are listed, as he said, in the staff decision, I think at page 3 or thereabouts, and we can all look at that, but proving that he doesn't have that at the tip of his memory today isn't, I thought, the point of this hearing. Thank you.
Well, now the witness testified that he thought there were numerous pre-application meetings, so I think it's fair to confirm where the witness is getting that information from.
Yes, Ms. Koloskova, but in answer to your, I believe, immediately preceding question, he said he didn't have personal recollection standing here today. And then you basically asked him the same thing, phrased slightly differently. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
And I say standing here today advisedly just simply because it looks like Mr. Pyle is standing as he's testifying to us. If you're seated, sir, I didn't mean anything by saying standing.
I am standing due to a very unfortunate medical condition that necessitates that I stand up, so I apologize if I'm needing to stand.
No, don't apologize.
Sorry to hear, and sometimes standing's better anyway, but
yeah, I thought it was just a choice. A lot of people like to stand to work, so I thought you were in that camp.
When you, Mr. Pyle, when you decided, when you were editing the decision, why didn't you just pick up the phone and explain this either path dichotomy to the applicant and tell them what was going on?
There was discussion around which action to take and how to communicate that action. And it was determined that we needed to provide the full detail around our decision to the applicant at the same time.
But you didn't do that in a draft decision, so the full detail was provided in only the final decision, correct?
Objection. Partially asked and answered and partially argumentative. We know what the chronology and the facts are. Counsel is really arguing what should have been done in her opinion.
She's withdrawing the question.
Mr. Pyle, did you ever take into account the larger the additional UZDP applications that might be forthcoming as part of your review in this application?
No.
Do you happen to know the larger extent of STCA's land holdings in that area?
Generally, I have done a tour of the King County Assessor's parcel viewer, which shows the extent of the land holdings.
Okay. Can you turn just a last couple of questions on the town? I believe you provided some testimony about the town center plan. Were you involved in the town center plan process?
No, that was adopted prior to my arrival in November of 2015.
Okay. But that would be a plan that guides your review for this type of UZDP, wouldn't it?
That would be a plan that guides the department's review.
Ms. Kalushka, how many more questions? How long?
Just one or two. You know what? Let's take a quick break, and maybe I can just make sure I wrap up during the break and then turn it over to Mr. Eglick.
Because we are beyond the normal. Mr. Eglick? What?
I was just going to say that if we take a quick break and that leads to more questions because we had a break and fertile imaginations have been at work, then I don't know that we've accomplished anything. But of course, I'm never against a break.
I have been hoping since approximately 10:35 that Ms. Kalushka's cross-examination is going to end so we could have our regular mid-morning break. And then Mr. Pyle just advised us, coincidentally, not on purpose, that he has a medical condition and that's why he's having to stand. And so now I'm sitting here thinking, this poor fellow's been standing for all this time. Maybe he'd like to be able to move around. So I'm looking to get the break in as quickly as I can. If Ms. Kalushka had only one question, I'd say let's do it. But a few minutes ago, you said you had one or two questions, and we're now 4 or 5 questions beyond that. So my inclination is to say I think we should take the break now. Any objection? No objection. Okay.
No, and my apology to Mr. Pyle.
It is 10:50 a.m. Is a 10-minute recess enough, Mr. Pyle, or would you like 15?
10 minutes is great.
Okay. We're at recess until 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. It is now 11:01 a.m. on July 16, 2021. This is the start of session 23 in the appeal hearing of UZDP 2019-00562. Ms. Kalushka is wrapping up her cross-examination of Mr. Pyle. Mr. Pyle, just a reminder, you're still under oath. Proceed, Ms. Kalushka.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
Mr. Examiner, I've been asked to let you know something before we get started.
Sure.
If I might.
Please.
Apparently, when there is those gaps or interference moments, that not only means that I couldn't hear, it apparently also means it wasn't being recorded. It's a go-to meeting problem. It's not a city problem, apparently.
Okay, now, great.
Can we have two recordings going, I thought? Is that right?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and I think I was thinking through as I was about to ask you, and I think I know the answer. You've told us that the city is also recording through your AV system there at council chambers, and I was wondering, does that affect that too? And it occurs to me, if you can't hear me, then the microphones in the room aren't picking anything up, and your AV recording will have a gap in it. Am I processing that logically?
I am just repeating what I was told by the wizard. Here's the wizard. He says that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we've been...
Yes, Ms. Schaaf. Was that you? Cindy, was that you? Yes. Except I can't hear you now. Lami. See, we wouldn't have had all this problem if City Hall staffers had just stayed in their homes and cubicles and everybody done it individually in their own little places. I think we'd have just dug right along.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Okay. With that, I just wanted to interject that our IT department has requested downtime this evening to correct the interruptions with the go-to meeting, and to resolve the several technical issues that have taken place this week during the STCA during this hearing. The recording contractor will commence the technical repair checks at 5 p.m. this evening.
Oh, okay. We were scheduled to go to 8 o'clock tonight. That would seem to be a little hiccup. Let me ask the parties. Man, I hate to lose what would amount to about 8 hours of testimony, but are you uncomfortable enough that you want us to stop where
an hour dinner break?
I think we're talking about 2 hours.
Are you uncomfortable enough to want us to stop where we are and either wait until Monday to pick it up again, or did I hear somebody saying something about 2 hours?
It sounded, if we were stopping at 5, we'd normally have that dinner break to 6. And so Mr. Eglick and I were just saying we'd be talking about 2 hours, which doesn't seem like anybody's too.
But are you comfortable going through till 5 with the hiccups that we're having?
I think if we have more hiccups and they become more problematic, we can revisit it. I'm comfortable, soldiering through till 5 and then picking up Monday. Just hope we don't have more of these interruptions. They're kind of disruptive, I guess.
They are, and it bothers me because I do not want to face a situation where, should my decision be appealed to a higher authority, that authority, because there are too many gaps here, go back and do it over again.
He can't hear us.
He can't hear us.
I can hear. Peter, can you say something, please? You can't hear us. We can hear each other.
Mr. Pyle, you're still hearing us, aren't you? Yep, he is. It's the City Hall gremlin. Man, I don't want to do this.
You're back.
Well, let's.
But what happened?
You
can you? If you can.
I didn't hear anything that was. I didn't hear anything that was being said until you said you know.
Can you explain what happened? Because if you
It
can't,
was the same staticky. With the same staticky. You get little. So you could tell someone was trying to say something. You could see lips moving, but couldn't hear anything.
but nobody turned something on or turned something off that triggered this incident. Is that
So
what I'm
It's
getting?
back again.
the only,
You can't hear me. Nope, he obviously can't hear me. Yeah. Well,
Tell the examiner that. Our IT expert here has made one suggestion, and I suggested that he pass it on to the examiner for what it's worth and see what you want to do.
hey, Mr. Hearing Examiner, this is Rich from the city of Sammamish. We could attempt to have everybody log off of the meeting and sign back in, and that may alleviate the problem.
Okay, I'm game to try it. It is 11:08 a.m. We will all log off and start over. I will be logging on at 11. Let's give it a few minutes to let it think about it after we we're not
That'll work.
immediately all trying to come back in. Let's say 11:05. We'll all log back in for a restart at 11:05.
Wait a minute, I've got 11:08 right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. 11:15. Let's make it round number. 11:15. We'll all log back in for
Okay, thank you.
start. Bye bye all.